Hey Corey, you know what? We're back here at West China Tea and we're talking with Daniel Whittington, and he says no agenda, let's just sit and hang out, have some tea, and chat among friends.
So I do have questions though.
Cool, questions
Is that
are
fair?
good. Yes.
Okay, first, what tea are we drinking next?
Oolong time.
All right.
This was originally going to be
What is-
my second tea.
What is different about oolong versus what we've been drinking?
So, 6 types of tea.
Ooh, long.
Green tea. You're using it now, okay. Yeah, I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when it was coming. But yeah, that's good. You got 6 types of tea.
Okay.
Oolong's one of them.
Okay.
And so far we've had a green tea, which was the first one, sheng pu'er.
Okay.
We've had a hei cha all the way on the other end, fermented tea,
Okay.
that's shu pu'er. Shu pu'er is a regional, it's like
Okay.
saying Scotch, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But the big category is hei cha, fermented tea. So
Okay.
all the fermented teas collectively are hei cha, means black tea.
Okay.
But not what we think of as black tea, because that's
Right.
called red tea in
Right.
Chinese. Another one of these types. So you've got green tea, yellow tea, oolong tea, red tea, white tea, and then hei cha. And what makes green tea green is it's unoxidized. We were talking about oxidation earlier.
Right.
Completely unoxidized. What makes red tea red? Lipton, chai, Earl Grey.
Yeah, they say
anything we
all
call
the
black
Indian tea type. Is that red tea?
Yeah, it's red tea,
Okay.
exactly. That's going to be fully oxidized.
Okay.
And then in between, you've got 2 categories that fall in this in-between level of oxidation. You've got yellow tea, which is like 10% oxidized. It's just like, it's kind of been withered in a humid environment, in a closed humid environment with limited oxygen. It's yellow. It's very, very rare. Most Chinese people have never had or maybe even heard of yellow tea, but it's one of the 6 categories, and we've got some. We're not going to drink it now because it won't stand up to this whiskey. And then you've got oolong, which is also partially oxidized, but it's a range. It could be 20%, it could be 80%, it could be anything in between. And it's not like there's these strict, no one's out there measuring.
So it
the
doesn't have
level
to do
of
with the
oxidation.
plant, it has to do with the processing.
And the plant, because there's certain plants that you use to make oolong. So green
Because if you
tea-
know what you're going to try to create, you're going to lean on the plant that delivers the best.
Kind of the other way around. You had these plants that have these very complex notes
Right.
that are genetically more restrained than just any old tea plant. So any old tea plant, you go to, there's a field of tea plants and someone's making tea. If those are seed propagated plants, it's not a cultivar. Or they might be a cultivar, but it's not a clone cultivar.
Right.
It's not one genome, it's all these different plants that have all these different characteristics and attributes being processed together, and you get effectively a blend of different plants. They do make single tree tea from these big old trees. We have some single tree gushu, ancient tree, sheng pu'er. It's just one plant. Just one, very, very micro batches, tiny little batches, 3 kilos, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so with oolongs, it's the opposite. It's like that, but what they do is they'll clone that mother plant. So they'll take that mother plant. This plant's really good. This plant tastes like orchids. You know, it's got this orchid note. I want to capture this orchid note. I'm going to clone this plant. I'm going to make a cloned cultivar, and then I'm going to develop my skill at processing this plant to the right degree of oxidation and roasting and all the other shit they do to it. They do a ton of stuff to oolongs. They're beating those leaves, they're tossing them, fluffing them.
Saying mean things to them,
Exactly,
saying nice
exactly,
things to them.
Exactly. Really playing with their emotions,
Yeah.
love bombing them. You know,
Yeah.
It's actually, it's very...
And being a little distant emotionally.
Exactly.
We drew the parallel once here with apples, and the idea that if you plant a seed, that a seed is not going to be the same as its parent.
Right.
Right.
And if you, we ended up having the root crop with the phylloxera, with the iron root,
Right.
where they were grafting on the old stalks of grapes. The same thing happens with apples. If you want the apples to breed true, you're creating clones.
Exactly. And so they don't do that with every kind of tea. Pu'er
They
is
do
not
it with
like that.
oolong.
The first two teas we had were both pu'er.
Okay.
Green pu'er, fermented pu'er, sheng and shu pu'er. Those are seed propagated plants. They got deep taproots. They're all they're different from each other, and so you get this kind of indistinct. Remember, we had that green tea first. It had this kind of indistinct character. It was kind of hard to put your finger on exactly what it was like. But this is going to be much more restrained, much more. They picked this plant to cultivate because it is a fragrant, complex plant.
Okay.
And then this is from Taiwan, and also this one is also bug bitten.
Okay.
Right? So zooming back out to oolong in general, what is oolong? It's a regional style. You see it being produced in southeastern China. You see it being produced in originally in the Wuyi Mountains is where they developed the technique. Phoenix Mountains is where the genetics come from. So when those genetics meet that technique, you get oolongs. And so there's the restrained, often clonal, but always cultivar-based plucking and processing of the tea initially. And then there's this last very important step that's roasting with charcoal. And so that roasting with charcoal, the degree to which you do that, the tea master does that. It is a highly skilled job. It's like your parents taught you to do that and they learned from their parents. That's how you know how to do this, right? And so that's this high degree of craft there. And then the farmer there's the farmer who grows it and does steps 1 through 16, and then there's someone else, the tea master, who just does this roast. And they can roast all kinds of different oolongs to just the right degree. That's their repertoire, of teas that they have that skill to roast. But the farmer's job is to oxidize it to the right degree. And so oxidizing to the right degree, if this tea is famous because it smells like apricots, and you know that, and you've had it, and it's good, and you're like, yeah, I see the apricot note. When you're oxidizing and processing and roasting that tea and doing all the things you do to it, your goal is to bring out that note.
Okay.
You're going to get a range of oxidations, even from one varietal, within one varietal, from
to when
one
you find
master
it.
to the next.
Like, oh,
exactly.
stop.
Exactly.
There it is.
Who grew it, who processed it,
Right.
is going to come to bear on how oxidized it actually is. So it's a special category, and it's the only one that, we say the name in Chinese. You could say hei chai, you could say black tea, because that's what it means. But oolong means dark dragon, and it's this very special category. It's hyper-regional. Southeastern China and Taiwan is where they produce this, and it's the most complex tea as far as its production. There's some very fancy green teas that have really complicated production methods, but in general, as a category, oolong is going to go through the most processing. And so you get these really complex notes, and the goal is to have all these different levers to push and pull to bring out these very nuanced, complex notes that are the result of this specific breeding, right? Yeah.
I hope the whiskey I brought for this doesn't dominate and destroy it.
We'll see.
It might be a nice
taste it
counter.
first. Yeah. It's juicy. It's a juicy one, so we'll see. But again, this was not the tea I intended for this whiskey. I was going to come out this whiskey with that last tea, that earthy petrichor tea, but I think it's going to work.
No, this one smells softer.
Now, you mentioned Taiwan, and I've been following some of your social media.
Oh, I dropped some. Sorry.
Is this one of the new Taiwanese strains that you just got in?
Yes. We got 3 of them. We got these from a friend who lives in Taiwan, and he sourced these for another tea company that has since gone out of business. And he was like, and it's legally imported, it's tested for pesticides and herbicides and all that, so it's clean, because I usually source the tea myself. If someone else sourced the tea, then I don't want to sell it because I don't know.
You don't know what happened.
But this guy has all the credentials, and the company that he sourced it for, I also know the owner of that. He's very, very good at what he does.
Why does it look like little beads instead of like the long stringy bits?
Exactly, great question. It's been rolled. This is there's Taiwanese oolong. There's 4 regions that make oolong. You got the Phoenix Mountains and the Wui Mountains. That's where the genetics come from and where the technique comes from, respectively. They're long, kind of twisted. They call them strip type. In America, they call them strip style oolongs, where it's a long leaf, looks much like the first thing that we drink. And then in Anxi and then also in Taiwan, you'll see these rolled ones, where it's like they're getting these leaves rolled up, and so when we are done drinking this, these leaves will be huge. Notice there's a lot less tea here than there was for the first tea that we had, because it's so compact. The weight is the same.
It's like when I have, is it jasmine tea? That
little balls, jasmine pearls,
and then you put them in, and it's just like, wow, that took over.
Exactly. So it's like that, except these are just big, broad leaves, whereas those jasmine pearls will be the little buds, usually. They're little, delicate leaves. These are going to be big old leaves.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, that's my experience seeing you drinking tea from our past. You were drinking more of an herbal type of tea. Is that your experience with tea? Is that where you started off with?
Oh, for me?
Yeah, for you.
Oh, you're talking to someone. No, I started with just English tea. That's my origin.
Okay.
Is just like my family has English backgrounds. Having I didn't grow up having tea. I grew up in Texas. Grew up having iced tea. But when I ended up visiting England and Scotland, and it was just tea with everything. It was like, oh yeah, this is okay. So it was in my teens, late teens, that I discovered tea all the time, 5 times a day. Right.
Yeah.
But it was always English tea.
Right.
PG Tips, Taifu, and so on. And then when I discovered I actually really liked that, then I got into all variations of those Indian-based teas where they'll do a lot of, this is why I'm going to ask you this question. I would think of it now as blending.
Right.
where they took what I would argue is a sort of generic, now I'm saying red tea, I guess, a generic red tea base, and then they might add a whole bunch of other things, and now you've got Scotland berry bonnet black tea.
Right,
and then you pick it up, and it's not just tea leaves, it's some other things mixed into there, and not actual flavoring.
And now, is that something that, so when you were in the UK, then, were you encountering that kind of thing? Oh, really?
Yeah,
they were
all
drinking
over
like
tea
blueberries
shops.
and stuff?
Well, not
in
blueberries.
Tea shops. Okay.
Yeah, but you get tea shops where it was like it would be named blueberries, something or other.
Does it have,
it wasn't flavored, although you would also find those
in a tea shop.
Yeah.
But that's not what people are drinking.
Not generically, no. But I might find like one of my favorite ones was like the Blue Lady, which is an Edinburgh-based tea blend. I think it's called the Blue Lady. Anyway, and it's got all kinds of stuff in there, like
other plants.
Like other plants and things with the red tea.
So that's wild, because I always think of British people and Irish people as just drinking the straight unscented, except maybe Earl Grey. Maybe Earl Grey, which is scented with bergamot.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe Earl Grey. But
that is fragrant and beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Oolongs are the most fragrant.
It's like a flower.
Yeah, it's like flowers, it's like fruit, it's
oh, I'd love that garden.
Yeah. Taiwanese oolongs are the like sexiest, flashiest type of tea. I got into tea through Taiwanese oolong. It was my first love.
I could totally see that.
They're all fireworks. You can start to see them already unraveling a little bit, but you don't want them to go from 0 to 60 right away. You want them to take their time, because that's the longevity of the tea. If it goes bloop bloop, and that's like, well, you got one steeping out of that, and now it's done.
And that's everything that all the nuances dumped into one glass.
Exactly. It's like
so,
cacophony.
Is there a lot of blending in Chinese tea?
Not on the scale that we deal with.
I mean, we've talked before on the previous, depending on how these air, on previous shoots, that like there's blending in the sense that a whole bunch of farmers are providing all of their products to one processor. But I'm speaking of from relatively finished product, mixing various styles of production into one container that you would then steep or drink or, right? Like, would you ever see like, here's a packet that's a blend of green, red, and oolong?
No.
Okay.
No, but sometimes you do see people, like the first two teas that we had, Champoir and Choupor, sometimes you see people make those together.
Yeah, I could see that, because they seem like they would go together.
Yeah, they're the same tea, one's fermented.
Like, balance and soften the weightiness of the fermented one
with the brightness
of the green, and just sort of like introduce you to the fermented one.
It's nice. And before the modern era, before the fall of the Chinese Empire, right, there was an art of blending teas, not blending teas with other plants like we do now, but blending teas with teas.
Right.
And when you've got something like English breakfast, that's a blend of all red teas.
Right.
But you're talking about crossing categories.
Right.
No, I never see it, except when I was in Montreal on vacation one year, I would blend Choupor and Tieguanyin, a charcoal roasted, very, very rich, dark charcoal roasted rolled oolong like this from Anxi. Super, super roasty tasting.
Right.
With Choupor, that earthy, loamy tea that we just drank. And that was my Montreal blend that I would do when I was on this one vacation. And it's good, but I don't ever do it. I always drink teas all by themselves.
I would be so tempted to take like some of the greens and some of the fermenteds, and then just take one of those beads from the oolong and be like, bing. Let's just see if this one little almond oolong just adds a little apricot note to the...
And you'd get something cool, because I have drank, we empty the tea out into this bowl, but sometimes when I'm doing it by myself at home, or people aren't emptying their cups into them, you put emptying your cups in these, but sometimes all that's going in there is the first rinse of the tea.
Right.
And I've drank that. Right. And the finished leaves. So no one's lips have touched any of that. Just dead leaves and the first rinse of the tea just sitting there. And I've drank that. And that's like 5 different teas together. And it's good. Obviously it's just like the wash, but it's good.
It's still,
And it's like, wow, this has got a lot of new stuff in it. So there's something to be explored there. I don't know if I'm the guy to explore it, because the nature, my deal, I'm not there for the rolls. I'm there for the nigiri. You know what I mean? I'm not burritos. I'm tacos. You know what I mean? So I'm a purist. I just like one thing at a time. Is my nature. But you should.
See, my nature is to play with things and to be like, ooh, if I have 5 bottles of whiskey at home, at some point I'm gonna know what it tastes like to put them all 5 together in one glass.
So cheers to the new business model for somebody out there.
Chaotic neutral. You can call your business chaotic neutral.
And then later I'm gonna be like, oh, like I had this one. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you?
I was gonna say dump that.
Yeah,
Give that to the toad.
I didn't realize you put things in there.
No, I'm tasting it.
Yeah, I had a bottle of really smoky whiskey from this one distillery before they'd gotten a handle on making it nuanced and subtle, and it was just like beat the shit out of you. Took one sip and I was like, nope. But I had a whole bottle. So what do you do with that? I discovered by accident later that a half ounce of that smoky whiskey with 2 ounces of Bushmills Irish is a really amazing whiskey.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Right. And so what I did was I just blended them all in that ratio until I had like 3 bottles worth of whiskey, and then I redecanted them back into the 3 bottles I had used and labeled them, and that was my blend until I ran out of that. And that's how I drank that whiskey I didn't like.
Right.
It's like I found a way to blend it out.
That's cool.
Until I did like it.
Yeah, that's cool. It's this world that it's like a big world, you know. And for the scientist in me is like, if I'm gonna do that, I need to do it methodically. I need to have 0.5,
Erlenmeyer flasks,
1.5, 2, increasing the permutations and tasting each one and trying to get a clean palate to taste each one and then solidify like a recipe. And I do not have the energy for that.
Yeah.
So I'm
that's
like,
what I
was
did.
like, what? Yeah.
Now you did do a blend for a movie where you were using different, and I can't remember what was it called.
Oh, that was Gordon's movie called Tertium Squid.
Why would they need a custom whiskey blend for a movie?
In the movie, they drank this whiskey as a part of the scene, and the guy who wrote the script is a friend of ours, Gordon Atkinson, and he wanted to like have a real whiskey that was made just for the movie to give as a gift to the investors. And
that's a cool move.
Yeah.
Actually, that's like a kind of like a badass move.
And so he gave me, here's the description of the whiskey in the script.
Oh, wow.
Because it was an unknown whiskey, right?
Right.
So in the script, I described the whiskey as tasting like this. So can you create a blend that tastes like that? And I was like, yes, I can. And we did. And it was a blend of Scotch, and 2 different Scotches and a Texan whiskey.
Wow. So that's like both of those what you described feel like kind of like fuck you blends where it's like you're crossing lines, like you are pissing people off with these blends because you think about blended whiskey, it's really kind of trying to achieve a homogeneous.
Yes, it is. Easy like, drinker, acceptable. Whereas my blends were more about like I'm gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, this is an abomination. I'm committing a sin against the creator right now. But it can be good. That's the thing, is it's cool, and people need to go there. If people don't go there, you never know.
Yeah, I didn't have this tattoo until after that first blend. I woke up and it was there. I was just like, oh, I guess I have that now.
I used to get some really strange phone calls coming in. I don't know where some of them come, but we're in a place that strange people call. And they said, we're doing a film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's in Texas. What kind of whiskey would he be drinking? And I turned
Schnapps,
around.
Austrian.
I gave him
right?
2 different answers. I said, if you're in Texas, you should be drinking a Texas whiskey, but you're a movie company. You're probably going to go with a big name brand.
Yeah,
because
probably.
you can get a lot of
sponsorship.
You get sponsorship and a lot of money out of it.
Revenue.
But that was a question that was asked of me. I answered it in one way. I want to ask the 2 of you, if you were going to answer that question, and this is a whiskey for Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Texas.
From Texas, what kind of whiskey would he be drinking?
It would probably be Garrison Brothers.
That was my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just so full of attitude.
Yeah.
And so unapologetically, fuck you. I don't really care. This is what I'm doing. I don't care what you think.
and the big name brand that I thought that they might go for was, if it was just international, I said Macallan or Dalmore.
Yeah, just because it's known and it's
which
a
are
big brand.
Great whiskeys, but as a fun movie whiskey, that's yeah. I don't think there's nothing such Texas about either though.
Oh,
not at all.
This is so pretty.
Yeah, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger is from Austria,
Yeah.
so I think that he would be drinking schnapps. But since there's no schnapps in Texas, I think that he would be drinking some kind of peach brandy. Because I know that Texas is very famous for their peaches.
We could have some brandy.
We have very nice peaches. I went to the farmer's market in Mühle
Millions
the
of
other day,
peaches.
and the peaches are very nice right now. If you have not had peaches this year, I very much recommend you try them.
Hey, Sohan, can you speak Chinese with a German accent?
我不知道我没 well,
More whiskey.
We're Irish,
Yeah.
Irish, but not German.
Yeah.
There we go. Is Seamus going to show up again?
There's no good reason for him to show up. Seamus is not a toy. He comes out when it's time for him to come out. Yeah.
This is got a disconnect for me between the nose and the mouth now.
Yeah.
Like on the nose, it's getting increasingly fruity, but the mouth is getting increasingly earthy and almost minty. I'm getting a lifted palate experience like mint would give to you.
That is that Hoyuan that we were talking about. Think about your throat. Bring your mind to your throat, behind your Adam's apple. It's like you consumed something with menthol.
Yeah,
It's
that's
that
what I mean.
menthol, that cooling quality. That, when you think about that specifically in your throat, that is what I was referring to earlier.
Yeah.
The Hoyuan, the throat resonance is what that means. The throat resonance, and that's part of the chi of the tea.
Okay.
And when you taste a tea and it's got that, and you're like, wow, I can feel that in my throat. That's a good tea. If it's a nice feeling, if it's that, like you said,
it's
minty,
opening.
It can also be warming, like whiskey. That's what I always say when I'm guiding people in an experience. I did this just on Sunday, yesterday. I just did this class, Cha Chi, the breath of tea, where I guide people through all these things that I'm talking about. And what I'll tell people in the Hoyuan part, where I'm trying to give them an idea of what are you looking for, what's the sensation, I say sometimes it's cool like menthol, sometimes it's warm like whiskey. Because what it is this lingering sensation in the throat. That huigan is the lingering sensation in the mouth, you know, and you can feel that too. It's like a film that comes
I think it's
mouth.
both for me, but it's very different from the nose.
It's very different
right
from the
now.
nose. Yep.
Like they are two different, totally different and separated experiences.
Yep.
Since we started doing this, I'm noticing patterns on camera that I'm doing that I never knew that I did before. But when I'm tasting and sensing things, I have this little
Go like
tip.
this?
Yeah, it's like, what is that?
Yeah. What am I feeling?
Do you notice any tics or habits?
Oh man, I've got them, but they're nervous tics, and I'm embarrassed about them. So.
He's gonna start doing them now because he's been self-conscious. Yeah. So
It's
I'm
starting to soften and turn more into the rose-like direction instead of the honeysuckle-like fruity direction.
Yeah.
But it's still
Oolongs are a ride. They
Yeah.
are the most diverse category of tea. They are one of the most complex categories. They're one of the most fragrant. Them and probably aged white teas are the most fragrant teas.
There's a sweetness that just showed up for the first time to it now.
Yep.
Like it's sugar-added sweetness.
Yeah. Like on the tongue sweetness.
Yeah.
Which you don't get a lot of with tea. But when you get it, and this is the nice thing about whiskey is that whiskey doesn't have sugar. I mean, obviously it has some sugar, whatever, but it's not like Coca-Cola.
It's not sugar added.
There's no sugar added. So when you taste it with tea, although whiskey is much stronger tasting than tea, mostly because of the tannins and the alcohol, but tea has tannins too. But you're not competing with these hyper-stimulant flavors like salt, sugar, acid, soy sauce. These things
They just obliterate.
coat the palate. Your palate remains relatively clean with just straight whiskey.
Yeah.
Compared to something that has a lot of oil or has something that
botanicals
has,
like gin.
Exactly. So I'm going to crank up the heat and I'm going to do a longer steeping to stand
And then I'm going to pour you guys this.
This bad boy.
So this is one of the first solo blends that I did for when I was a part of Crowded Barrel Whiskey Distillery. And it was called the Jackalope.
Oh, cute.
And it is adorable. It was a blend from 3 distilleries. So Balcones is in here, but not just one barrel. A mixture of 3 different barrels in varying proportions to create the Balcones component. So I blended what would have been 5 products from 3 distilleries. So there's a little bit of red, Real Spirits, who you've met, Davin.
Yep.
There's a little bit of 15-year-old light whiskey from MGP in Indiana. And then there's mostly, like 3/4, a mix of 3 different barrels from Balcones of 3 different types of aging. So I think one of them was a bourbon cask, and then 2 were varying types of sherry cask. One, a version of what's called Decolor, that I think I got some. They then moved into something else, and then one that was just more of a classic sherry cask. And it took me about 2 months to create this, doing exactly what you described, of sitting there and then just creating endless variations until I found the ratios that started to land in the direction I wanted them to land, and then scrapping the rest and starting from scratch with that variation.
Yeah.
And then narrowing it down. This is, probably 20 pages in my notebook of and now we've headed this direction.
Yeah.
And I started over 3 times.
Yeah.
So 3 times I got to close to the finish line and it just wouldn't come together. And I backtracked like 3/4 of the way down the process and started over down a different path.
This is why I don't even play with it. That's why I don't even play with it, because I don't. My conscience will not let me not do that, but I literally cannot.
There are times when you're doing blends where it comes together very quickly.
Oh yeah,
This one was, you had so many barrels and you had an idea of what you wanted to do even before you started blending. You were sourcing barrels from multiple places.
I was sourcing because I knew what I wanted from them.
Exactly.
It was on purpose.
So you had an idea
it got
in your
even
head.
harder. Yeah. But to me, it was identical to my music career as a songwriter or as a producer or as mixing in multiple band instruments. It was sometimes you sit down and you hit the guitar and a song comes out and it's done.
Right.
And you're like, that was pretty amazing. That's very rare in blending, that you sit down, mix a couple things, and you're like, shit, that was it. Right?
Yeah.
Usually it's more like, I think there's a song here. And then you try a couple things, you're like, no, and you write some lyrics, and you're like, no, the melody, and then after all the work and the altering and the changing, and someone else comes in and adds an instrument to it, and you're like, oh, that gives me a new idea for this direction.
Right.
And then eventually you have what everyone hears on the album.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what this one became.
And I think I'm going back and remembering this. This is what, 1.5 years, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. This is a while back. And
this is 2 years ago.
Yeah, and there, if I remember correctly, there was a certain thing on the finish that I had trouble picking apart until I found it. And it was one of those things where it's like, I know there's something there. I don't know whether we're going to pick it up.
Yeah,
today,
we'll find out right
let's
now.
Find out,
but to me, this is very dense, very heavy, very desserty, very much I would call almost a winter whiskey, which is just like, it's a mixture of all of the really rich desserts you get during the holidays, but it's also a little bit of the cold and the brittleness and the distance at the same time.
Yeah, dried fruits for sure, but the darker dried fruits.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's really nice though.
Right?
It's really nice, man. I thought it was going to be way more stodgy based on how you were talking about. You're like,
no, it's
nice. It's very balanced.
Yeah,
it's very balanced, and it's
rich.
It's rich and it's concise. It says a lot in a little bit of space, and
then it's dry.
It's dry, and it's got a very sophisticated kind of, very holiday feel. It's cold. There's a fire. And there's some holly berries.
Yeah.
And there's some, fancy desserts going on. It's really good.
Right?
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's so cool to drink the one that you blended.
Yeah.
Sitting here talking to you, drinking the one you blended. And I do know CJ and I do know Davin. And even if they didn't make the whiskeys that are in here, they're representing their distilleries.
Yep.
And it's so cool. It's really moving, this part of the whiskey community.
Right.
I think is one of the coolest things about it, is that it's such a privilege to know you and drink the whiskey you're drinking, know them, and know that these people who I've met and formed these bonds with came together.
Davin's hand was in this class.
Exactly. It came together and made something like this.
Yeah.
It really is a really beautiful thing.
Isn't that cool? That's what I love about the whiskey industry, especially in Texas.
Absolutely.
This one feels the most, if you want to know all my preferences, they're in this glass.
Yeah.
In every direction. And if you just want a little snapshot of Daniel's preferred whiskey direction, it lives in this bottle.
Yo, try it. It works.
Yes, it
works.
does. No.
It works.
I know.
It works good.
Oh, so the fruit has subsided
Yes.
a little in the nose, and now I'm getting more of the earth and cream for weird reasons. Oh, wow. There is there's a really nice, almost licoricey earthiness to the palate that wasn't there before, that combines with the mint. It's almost like if licorice was a wintergreen.
Whoa.
Right, but it doesn't quite
a
become
thought there.
licorice, right?
Right.
But if for some reason you had in the wintergreen spearmint mint family something that just had a little hint of that dark note of licorice,
married into a licorice family. Try it though, one after the other. Do try because there's something about the taste on the tongue. Here,
There's a nutty, please. There's a nuttiness to this that keeps showing up for me that strangely my brain keeps interpreting as Cheerios. But there's a nuttiness to the palate that's kind of throwing me a little bit.
The combination, what I like about this is more in the mouth than in the nose, which is a little unusual. Yes. It's really the burn of the whiskey covered by the tea does something. And I'm trying to put my finger on it. I'm getting Nilla wafer, or no, not Nilla wafers. What are the ones that are like the very, very light wafer and then they got like the vanilla cream in the middle? And they're like cheap. They come in a plastic bag. And they're always stale, and they fundamentally really are not great. But they kind of I get this thing.
I almost am heading the direction of animal cracker. It's very strange, like sort of generic cookie taste.
I'm heading more because the fruit is popping after the tea. I'm heading more towards Fig Newtons.
I could see Fig Newtons in the whiskey.
Products, you know.
We definitely are.
We're back to Nabisco.
Yeah. This program brought to you by Nabisco.
Thank you. Need a sponsorship.
Thank you to our sponsors.
And if you want to sponsor,
I feel like a Keebler elf in a tree.
Somewhere, definitely. It just reminds me of the comedian Gary Goldman is like, the Fig Newton guy's really committed to a really specific. He's like, and then later, he's like, I think it's like, screw it. If it can fit in a Newton, we're gonna sell it. No one knows what that means, but it means something. Cheers.
Yeah, and I'm getting more of this honey coming out, like honey, like rich honey bouquet. And then when I taste this, I'm gonna smell this, I'm gonna taste it, and then immediately. And I get all this fruit, and I get this ocean wave of like cool blue, I don't know what, but it's like cool blue kind of perfume.
I just had this really weird memory pop into my head on smelling this tea. And no, that's exactly what it is. Now that I'm verbalizing it, that's exactly what it is. Growing up in Waco, we lived in a really old house. It was built in the late 1800s. Whoa. It was in the neighborhood that used to be mansions, but was now like the worst part of town. But it was like a 2-story massive house with like big pillars on the front porch.
Oh, and ghosts.
And ghosts,
right. Of course.
And gangs and robberies but it had no central air, no central heating of any kind whatsoever. During the summer, only one room was air conditioned because it was the only room we could close the doors to.
God.
And the rest of the giant house was 96 degrees.
That's insane.
And ceiling fan. We had an attic fan that we could turn on and it would bring the temperature down to the low 90s, high 80s in the summer.
That's literally insane.
And in the winter, we also only heated 2 rooms. And it was the living room connected to the kitchen and the study, which was all in one row. We'd close all the doors and you would heat those rooms with these ceramic space heaters, gas space heaters. And what would happen is you would light the gas and it would heat up these ceramic bricks. And then it had a grill vent on the top, and they sat in the corner, and it just vented this hot air off these ceramic bricks.
Wow.
But it mixed with the old house in the room and the kind of smells that my mom would put to make the house smell nicer, right?
Wow.
And so I picked this up, and I got this smell of like, it's cold, and I'm sitting in front of the ceramic heater holding my socks up to warm them up before I put them on.
Yeah.
Because it's so cold. Because all our clothes are upstairs in our bedrooms, and it was like 30 degrees in there, right? So you bring all your clothes down, and you would hold them up in front of the heaters until they were warm enough to put on. And I'm just sitting there holding my clothes, and this hot air is venting off these ceramic bricks, and that's just popped into my head with.
I've heard the reverse happens in Texas, where they put the bed sheets into the refrigerator and they cool the bed sheets off so that when it's time to go to bed, they had to fall asleep really quick.
Before they warmed up. No, what we had was oscillating fans and spray water bottles. That's what my sister and I had. So you'd lay in bed and you would mist water over your body while you laid in bed, and then the oscillating fan would cool you down. And then if you were still awake when you dried off, you'd do it again.
So in 4 years, when the Olympics are back, we're going to have them see how long the athletes can survive in that house.
With a spray bottle.
Leave.
With a spray bottle and a box fan. So that note, though, that you gave, people are always asking me, like when I'm trying to tell people, what is the difference between a tasting note and the chi of the tea? People will be like, whatever words you could use to summarize that memory and taking this very three-dimensional thing, putting it in two-dimension, being like linen, old house, flowers. But what it really is this very intimate, very personal, very specific thing that you get from this tea. That's the chi of the tea. It means the breath, the spirit of the tea. Then that's what we go for with the tea. And yes, it's related to the smell, but the fact that it triggers this deep, deep, deep stuff, very old, that might not be a memory that you've accessed very recently because it's so specific. And it was triggered by a taste and a smell.
Right.
And so it has this deep emotional content. It has this deep sentimental emotional content that it might enter you through the senses, but it goes to the deepest parts of your consciousness.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Your memories, your core memories, the things that form your personality. And that's what I love about tea, and that's what I love I live for those kind of notes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I get the same thing in whiskeys.
Yeah.
And in whiskey tastings, I'll find the same moments from people. Oh, this is my childhood treehouse. Yeah. Oh, this is camping in the Boy Scouts.
Yep.
Oh, this is my father taking me fishing.
This is open.
And you don't get that from Coca-Cola. You know what I mean?
Really
there is a real difference between something that has the craft and the tradition and the deep, deep dedication and love that goes into making these particular things that have been passed down for generations, and something that is a manufactured product that has no human content whatsoever.
Right.
There's a real difference, and that's, for me, that's the heart of the difference, is that something can evoke something so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say when it comes to mass-produced products, the only memories they bring is the memory of themselves.
Right. But
they don't wake up other memories. So you might have, Coke, that reminds me of this amazing thing with Coke when I was growing up.
Like my mom always served us Coke on Fridays.
Yeah, or like this is Lipton tea.
Right,
like my grandmother always made Lipton tea. It's fine, but it's centered around itself. As opposed to
100%.
waking up something else in you.
Right, exactly. That was a whole journey, you know what I mean? And that's like a deep part of you. I know so much more about you from that tasting note, because that is so intimate.
Yeah, and it's also, those larger brands can also be a way of wearing a badge and saying, look at me, I'm a sophisticated person. I drink sophisticated stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the combination, I feel good about it. I feel good about it. And even though it wasn't my intended pairing, I think it's a good pairing because
it does work.
Yeah, it doesn't run over the tea the way I thought it would.
It actually lightens the whiskey a little bit. This whiskey can feel heavy-handed for some people.
Yeah,
kind of like me.
I like it. Yeah, I'm into it.
Kind of like hanging out with me sometimes. But like the tea, sort of like it takes the edge off. And provides you a little bit of a like a refreshing breather.
Yeah.
And
that's something that I've been noticing too. It's like it's like doing two whiskeys side by side, but this is like a refreshing, and it's a palate cleanser, and it's like, no, it's another thing of its.
It's not getting lost either.
No. Yeah, and I think it's like that fruity fragrance dovetails really well with the notes of the whiskey. They're not the same. They don't run over each other because they're different, but they do dovetail like that. And as it washes away the burn, you get that fruitiness comes in. And I thought that the tea could be completely overwhelmed by the whiskey, but it actually very harmonious.
This is becoming more jammy, like with the dark fruits and the prunes. But I'm also getting more orange, like orange citrus type on top of it. So it's almost like a compote.
Yeah. This might be my favorite pairing of the night. I think this is.
It really is electric.
Yeah, I like that first one a lot. But I think that I fundamentally like this whiskey better. And I like that Man Lo Sheng, but this is a much more complex tea. And so I think this is my tasting of the night.
I just realized when we were talking about, the PG tips and the Liptons, my family was red rose tea. And the red rose tea came with little souvenirs inside of the box, just like you would find in cereal boxes.
Yeah.
But they had like little animals. And I'm realizing that, my grandmother and my mother-in-law and my mother collected
do that.
All of all of the little animals from the little tea box, and they look exactly like these tea pets.
Collect them all.
Except they were like ceramic, and they were glazed ceramic.
Whoa. Do you still have any?
I don't know. I'm sure that you can find them in little shops. So,
But you don't have any sitting in
so if
someone's
anybody
house
out
somewhere.
there has some red rose tea
Pour
animals.
tea on them. They're tea pets.
There you
That's
go.
why you got them. They're tea pets.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I just did a fuck you blend right there.
Sure.
Every
Heck
now
yeah.
and again we do it. Every now and again
That's
we'll
how
do
you
it.
should.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there's, that we have a long-standing tradition of drinking whiskey and choupouar. We call it pouski. I've been doing this for 15 years. You know what I mean? And that's one of the classic tea liquor blends that we'll do.
You probably just improved the blend.
Yeah, we were doing
You
that.
should. I should have been there when I was making this.
We were doing that with the aged, the silly old goose.
Yeah.
And we did it with the aged gin as well.
Yeah.
One of Sohan's team members wanted to blend some of those vodkas and gins.
Tea and liquor, 9 times out of 10 is not good.
Yeah.
But that 1 time out of 10,
It's like, oh,
it can be
nice.
really good.
Yeah.
It can be really nice. It can be really special. Yeah, man. Really.
Well, thank
really
you
good.
guys for drinking this with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for blending it and sharing it with us. And yeah.
And thank you for
fantastic.
joining us here at Whiskey Provisioner. We are happy to have you at the last taping of the last of this series at the Old West China Tea. We're going to be moving you. You're going to be
And
moving
all
yourself.
this, yeah.
I'm
Y'all
not going
are
to be there in
helping.
case you were
These
wondering.
guys are not helping
I'm
me
so
move.
sorry.
It's okay. We got it. We got people for it.
I don't know what day it is, but I definitely have an appointment.
Every time that you see Sohan on social media, there's like another little obstacle from people trying to get something found, something done, trying to get the right walls put up and all of the little things that happen when you're doing construction permits and all that stuff.
City of Austin, if you're watching this.
You know what you did.
They're trying to tell us we got a historic house now.
Yeah.
Trying to tell us we got a historic house, we can't change the outside. This is America, first of all. I don't care if my house is historic. It's my house. I bought it.
Yep.
And I can change the outside if I want to, first of all.
Oh, don't get me started on HOAs.
We don't have an HOA.
When your HOA is the city of Austin, it's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah. Once we're done with all we got all the permits and everything, and they're just slow rolling us. But yeah, we're gonna move. We're gonna move to East 7th. It's gonna be a fundamentally better location. Come if you're probably not even gonna be able to come by the time you're watching this, but if you can come here this week and experience this tea house before it's all gone. This is the future home of I-35. This is getting paved, gone, not a trace. And so if you want to experience a very, very special place that's been my home for the past 7 years, not my literal home, but I spend more time here than I do in my home, for sure. For the last 7 years, my daughter grew up here. I met my wife here, so it's very special and sentimental to me. If you got any pictures of this place, please tag us on Instagram and send them to us, whatever, so we can collect them. We only got 1 more week of this place. This is the last filming of this show, and I don't know, when is this going to air?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, if this airs before the end of the month of August, then you can get 25. I'll do a promotion.
Yeah,
so
do
you don't
it.
want to do them. 25% off on our website. Help us get rid of this stuff so we don't have to move it.
Yes.
It's a clearance sale. Please help us get rid of it. That's the deepest sale that we do, except for my birthday. That's the deepest sale that we do all year. We did a big one this year for the same reason, trying to clear all our inventory so we don't have to move it. Because it's the Hungry Ghost Festival with the coupon code Hungry Ghost, all one word, all caps. Hungry Ghost, happy Hungry Ghost Festival, y'all.
And you do have shipping. You have all the logistics.
Yeah, you can
here?
go to that is on the website. You could live in Alaska, and we will send you tea.
Yeah, Richard will bring it to your house.
Richard, for a small fee, Richard will come. And for a somewhat larger fee, he will by dog sled. He will deliver the tea by dog sled.
Elsa could probably handle that.
Yeah. Well, cheers to you guys.
Cheers.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'll swap. There
I'm
we
out
go.
of whiskey. I
And
drank all the whiskey.
keep in touch on social media because there's lots of more things happening, and we're going to be doing all kinds of cool new stuff, and we want to see you there.
Lots of more things.
Lots of more things.